There are 4 provinces in Canada that if you are able to get a job offer over there, or if you are able to go to school over there, the immigration route may be a lot easier than in other provinces. Today, we are going to talk about one of my favorite programs, the Atlantic Immigration Program. We're going to talk about who is eligible, who can apply, what the requirements are. Now, if you are not new to my channel, you know that I've spoken about this at length in 2019. So you have this resource and you have tons of other resources that I've already created. There is an Atlantic Immigration Program playlist on my channel, and there are blog posts on my website, AsToldByCanadianImmigrants.com, about this program. Now, we're going to dive right into the details of this program, Atlantic Immigration Program. So this program is specific to Atlantic Canada. Okay, so Atlantic Canada are the 4 eastern provinces in Canada. So it's New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland or Labrador, or Newfoundland and Labrador. This program is a permanent program. It started out as a pilot program, and we know from yesterday with the agri-food program that a pilot means that it's temporary, but now it used to be temporary, and now they have made it into a permanent program, which means that it works. If it hasn't worked for you, it just wasn't your time, but if they made it permanent, it works. Okay. Now, this program is employer driven. So you have to have a job offer from an employer that is in Atlantic Canada for this program to work for you. Here's a quick map of Canada so you get an idea of where Atlantic Canada is. So those are the eastern provinces. There are 4 provinces over here in the dark red. And just to give you some context, Toronto is this little blue dot over here. Of course, it's much smaller, but this is where most people know Toronto, Ontario. So that's where Toronto, Ontario is. And this is where Atlantic Canada is, just to give you some context. Okay. Now, in order to go through this program, you have to have graduated from a school over there. So a post-secondary institution in Atlantic Canada, or you're a skilled worker either inside or outside of Canada. Now, one of the reasons why I really liked this program when it started in 2019 is because you kind of come to Canada with a job already, and so you're working, versus coming to school and then finding a job and then kind of easing into the market or the job market somehow your own like that. You're landing as a worker with an employer already, which a lot of people prefer, job security, you know. So whether you're inside of Canada or outside of Canada, or this program is available to you. Now, what are the requirements for you if you want to be transitioned as a skilled worker? So a skilled worker is anybody who already has some level of work experience, whether it is in Canada or outside of Canada. So this program is available to people who are already inside of Canada who are not permanent residents in Canada. So once you have a qualifying work experience, and this is going to be based on the job at the tier and the NOC, once you meet the education requirements, language requirements, and you show that you have enough money, then you can be eligible for this program. If applicable for the money is because if you're already in Canada, you don't typically have to show any money in the bank if you're already here and you already have a job, for example. So that is going to be like on a personal level, specific to each person's profile, right? Now, if you are a graduate, so it means that you went to school in Atlantic Canada, you finished, you are eligible for this program if you graduated from a school that is a recognized school. So not just any school, it has to be on a list of designated learning institutions and qualifies for this program in Atlantic Canada. And we're going to go into more detail into like, you can't just go to school for a year. It doesn't work. Okay. There are minimum requirements for how long you have to study in order for you to qualify. And the usual stuff, education, language, and proof of funds. Now, everybody who is trying to qualify for this program as a skilled worker has to be skilled worker in, you know, we know that Canada measures skilled work based on the length of time across X amount of years. Yesterday, we learned with the agri-food program that you get 1 year work experience across the last 3 years. This one is 1 year work experience across the last 5 years, which means that, you know, you have a little bit more time to calculate up the hours. It doesn't have to be consecutive work time. It's just 1,560 hours of full-time or part-time work in the last 5 years. This can be paid. It has to be paid. It can be a paid position or paid internship. No unpaid internship or volunteer work doesn't count. You can't be self-employed, and you can count the hours while you worked when you were in school, as long as the job itself classifies or is considered in one of the tier categories. And if tier is something that sounds foreign to you, there's one video that I will link for you to go and watch to understand the NOC code and the tier system. Okay. So if you have work experience in a tier 0 or 1, then 1 year work experience will be okay for you. But if you're in a tier 2 or tier 3, this does not count for you. You have to have at least 2 years work experience. And then for a tier 4, you have to have the education and training. There is no limit or minimum requirement for how much or how long you have worked. So students who graduate from a school over there, they don't need any work experience, which is nice and interesting. They have to have had gotten their degree or diploma or certificates from a college or an institution that is over there, that is from a college or institution that is recognized by this program, and you have to have studied for a minimum of 2 years. So if you're opening to studying for 2 years in Canada and want to guarantee or make sure that you have a more seamless pathway to permanent residency outside of express entry, this is a really good option. Go there, study for 2 years. And you, of course, if you're studying for 2 years, you would have lived there for at least 16 months. And then you would have had a work permit or a study permit, and then converted to a work permit by way of the postgraduate work permit. So this is definitely a program that you can consider, but only if you studied in Atlantic Canada. Now, education is going to be, or the educational requirements to qualify for this program is going to be based on the tier that you are in, or the tier of the job that you're trying to qualify for as well. So if you are in a tier 0 or 1, which we know is managerial, or 1 is more professional, a doctor, architect, a lawyer, so they're not necessarily a manager, but they're a high qualified profession. Then you have tier 2, 3, and 4 is you either have a Canadian or equivalent high school diploma. So or equivalent means that, because you don't have to have studied in Canada, but or equivalent means that you took your credential that you got, or your degree or your certificate that you got from your home country, and you had it assessed by an educational assessment company like World Education Services. They will assess it and say, okay, this is equivalent to a Canadian raw. So if you have a 3-year bachelor's, they'll assess it and say this is equivalent to a 3 years bachelor's. If you have a high school, you say, okay, they assess it, this is equivalent to a Canadian high school. Because they could, if they based on the assessment, they could say your 3-year program is actually a 2-year Canadian equivalent, right? So it depends on the program you did, the country that you studied in, and how long you studied for, and different things to make it equivalent to Canadian. But what they will do is to just tell you what the Canadian equivalent is. And this is how you prove that you have the educational background to meet whatever requirement that they want, which we know is either 1 year Canadian or at least high school level Canadian. Okay. There are time limits to when this assessment should have been completed. So they wanted it to be less than 24 hours before you apply, 24 months before you apply for permanent residency. Language test, most or all. Once you're applying for permanent residency in Canada, you have to do a language test. The only way you're exempt from a language test, I think, is based on your age. So probably if you're too young or too old, everybody has to do an English test who is not a minor. And it's either, English or a French test, so not just English. And we know this from the previous video. If you never watched the agri-food one, education. Your Canadian language benchmark has to be at least level 5 if you are in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. And in tier 4, you can have a language level of level 4. Level 4 is the lowest possible score you can get on a language test. Okay, so here's the table of language test results based on compared to the Canadian language benchmark level. This benchmark level is comparing the CLB with the IELTS, which is what most people are accustomed to, which is the English test that most people do when they're not inside of Canada. Level 4, lowest. And then level 5 is going to be what the minimum is for a tier 0 to 3. So this is basically saying that, like, you just need to have basic knowledge of English. You don't even need to do too much to just pass this test. So if you are struggling to get good test results, I've had people email me before saying, I'm struggling to get a good test result. What should I do? Check for a program that will accept your test results. So if you have a 4, a 5, or a 6, the Atlantic Immigration Program or even the Agri-Food Program will be suitable for you. If you're consistently redoing the test and it's not working out for you, check this program. Okay. Now, proof of funds, we know that the government always wants to know if you can support yourself if you come here. So if you're already in Canada, you typically don't need to show proof of funds if you're already working in Canada. Now, if you're not working in Canada, you need to show proof of funds just for everybody who is one of your dependents, right? And we learned this as well yesterday, is that if you have a family of 4, even if you're the only one coming to Canada, you have to account for them in showing your proof of funds, because the government is assuming that you're having to work and send money to them to support them as well. So if you have 3 children and a spouse, but are not coming with you, then you need to claim 4 family members and that. Now, yesterday we saw in the Agri-Food Program that the financial requirements for the Agri-Food Program are significantly higher than the Atlantic Immigration Program, which was another reason why I like this program. Proof of funds for one person is 3,000 Canadian dollars. And compared to the Agri-Food Program yesterday, it was 13,000. Okay. And so it goes up by about $1,000 each time, plus or minus, until you get to seven family members. And then you just add $1,000 each. So this is quite attractive for showing that you can afford to migrate to Canada as compared to Agri-Food and even the Express Entry Program. So this is a big plus for me for this program. Now, remember I said that this is employer driven. Okay, so those are the requirements that you need to meet as an individual. You have your work experience, you have your language requirements, you have your proof of funds, you have your education, right? So those are the requirements that you need to meet on an individual basis. Now comes the employer's obligation in this whole process. You have to have a valid job offer from an employer in Atlantic Canada. This job offer does not need to be supported by an LMIA. These employers are considered to be LMIA exempt because they have already proven to the government. That's why this whole program exists, okay? They have already proven to the government that they cannot find people locally, and so they need to hire internationally. And so what these employers have done is applied to the government already. They've gotten pre-approval check, and they're on this thing called a designated list of employers. The designated list of employers are all the employers that are in Atlantic Canada, in all of the provinces that are able to hire internationally. Now, one thing with this list is that it's just a list of employers. It doesn't mean that the employers have job openings, which is nice and fun, right? Which is a problem that we are trying to solve. This is a problem that I had addressed in the past with a job list, and we are trying to see if we can do this again to help narrow down your search, or to at least help you with your search of jobs in Atlantic Canada. So we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. So the job offer in Atlantic Canada must be from one of the employers on the designated list, okay? If they're not on the list, but they're willing to give you a job, they can go and apply for designation, but that has nothing to do with you. They have to go and get themselves designated, and then they can give you a job offer. If they're not on the list, they don't qualify until they get on the list. So it's safe to stick with the list, okay? It has to be a full-time job offer. It has to be non-seasonal. And if it is a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, the position must be minimum 1 year. So it can be a contract position, so like a 1-year contract or a 18-month contract, but just a minimum of 1 year. But the tier 4 jobs, which are usually the more laborer jobs, or jobs that require less education or less experience, those positions have to be permanent positions with no end date. So depending on where the kind of job you're applying for, then you'll know whether it qualifies or not. Now, one thing that is extremely important to understand is that when you are applying for a job, it has to be a job that you are qualified for or more. So the job must be at the same skill level or higher than the work experience that qualified you for the job. So if you are a tier 4, if you're getting a tier 4 job offer, you can only get this job offer or apply for this kind of job with tier 4 experience. Your experience can't be a tier 0 experience applying for a tier 4 position, is my understanding of this. So you can't be a manager trying to apply for a job as a butcher. I think butchers are in tier 4. You have to be a butcher applying for a butcher, or you can be a butcher applying for a manager, but you can't give yourself a demotion, so to speak. You can't go backwards in terms of the level of experience that you need to apply for this job. So that's one thing to consider, is that you're looking for your level of skill work or higher. So you could be stepping up a notch and more responsibility, but you can't go backwards, okay? Now, we know from yesterday that how to check your NOC and the tier. If none of this tier stuff or NOC makes full sense to you right now, there are videos that you can watch after this one. They will be linked to this video. There's always good stuff in the description below for you to figure it out. You go to the NOC website, and that's where you find your NOC code, and then you figure out what tier that is in. So we're going to link that and watch that video after this video. Okay. So far, we know that you have meet the requirements, the employer meets the requirements in terms of being on the list, and the job itself meets the requirements across your skill level. Now, once the employer says, okay, here's the job offer, there are certain things that have to be in place before you can apply for permanent residency. Because remember that this program is a pathway to permanent residency. So the goal here coming out of this and meeting all these steps is that you are applying for permanent residency, not just a job, which is good, right? I like that. So you have to get a settlement plan. So this is a plan that's going to help you to figure out, okay, where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? What services are available? Are you bringing kids? What schools are available? What are the local things that I need to know, like the grocery store and all that stuff? A settlement plan, which is also a really good idea if you're coming here, landing, ready to work. If you don't know anybody, which most people don't know anybody in Atlantic Canada. The settlement plan is mandatory, so you have to have a settlement plan. It is free. So this is usually provided by an organization or company that is in that province, and your employers can probably point you in the right direction as to who can help you to provide you with a settlement plan that is free, okay? The settlement providers will help you with relocating. They will not help you with finding a job. So this step comes after you've received a job offer from your employer, okay? Because then you'll know which settlement agency to contact based on the location of your job, because that's going to be important for where you're going to live and all that stuff, right? So they won't help you find a job, so don't contact them before this step, before the steps of getting a job. And then once you have done your settlement plan, your employer must apply to the province to have your job offer endorsed before you can apply for permanent residency. So an endorsement is basically the province now, because even though the province has given pre-approval to the employer to hire for the job positions or the opening positions that they have, the province wants to then assess the job opening and the candidate that the employer has selected in order to give the green light. Okay, so there are a couple of steps here that require a second round of approvals, even though they're LMIA exempt. And this is nothing like the LMIA process, just so you know. This is the employer's responsibility to say, okay, hey, province, I have a candidate. Here's my job offer. Endorse it. So that this is just something that you as a candidate wait for, and then the employer gives it to you. And that is the Atlantic Immigration Program in a nutshell. So here are the steps. 1, you get a qualified job offer from a designated employer. Okay. Once you have that job offer, you get a settlement plan from a settlement service provider. Then you send the settlement plan to your employer. Your employer then goes to the province and gets a endorsement certificate, and the employer gives you that endorsement certificate to then apply for permanent residency. And those are the main steps to get to the actual permanent residency paperwork. Then once your application is in, you can apply for a closed work permit, because your closed work permit is going to be tied to the job offer that you got to apply for permanent residency. So you can apply for your for a work permit to come to Canada and start working until your application is processed, because the application processing time can take up to 6 months. I'm sure it can take longer than that. Right now, they're saying the processing time is 6 months, but it could be 6 months plus. And your spouse or common law partner can apply for a work permit as well to accompany you to Canada and work. Now, if you are a visitor to Canada during this process, so this is where I like this program plus the visitor to worker program. So if you can visit Atlantic Canada on a visitor's visa, find a designated employer, get a job from them, do all the steps, blah, 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 on your visitor's visa, get your application in, you can apply for a work permit when you're inside Canada and start working with that employer. So, of course, when this program started, visitor to worker didn't exist, but now that visitor to worker exists, I think it's a nice combination. Just saying. It's just my 2 cents, okay? Just my 2 cents. What do you do now that you have all this information? Well, we can help you inside the Canadian Dreamers Club. We can connect you with our immigration consultant. We can connect you with our career coach to help to find a job, locate an employer, find a job, get the job, then get your immigration process done with the help and coaching and support from myself, my career coach, and my immigration consultant, my being immigration consultant. So you can jump right into the club, get it done. Or if you're still poking around trying to figure out if this is good for you or if the club is a good fit for you, you can win a chance to join one of our live coaching calls inside the Canadian Dreamers Club. Now, there is a game that we're playing called A Secret Word, and the secret word for today is Nova Scotia. So you're going to go over to AsToldByCanadianImmigrants.com/event. Link is always in the description below. Type in the secret word Nova Scotia along with your information, and we will pick people at random to be a part of the Canadian Dreamers Club next coaching call or a coaching call that's available for the month. Now, if you're already a member in the club, then you have that plus more. Anybody who tries to enter secret word will get access to just one coaching call to just get a taste of the environment, to come into the club and see what the live coaching calls are like and get a little bit of direction to then figure out what their next steps should be. Because some people are just poking around, and we can appreciate that. We want to help you to stop being a poker and to take action. So come join us in the Canadian Dreamers Club, enter the secret word for today, Nova Scotia, and we can help to set you on your way. We would love to have you as a part of the club. Now, I want to just do a little plug here for my people who are not in Atlantic Canada, who are not finding jobs in their industry, okay? This program is available to you even if you are outside of Atlantic Canada. And even if you studied outside of Atlantic Canada, you just won't be eligible through the international graduate stream, but you are eligible through the skilled worker stream. So if you're not finding any jobs in Ontario and you are willing to relocate, this is definitely a program that you can explore. There are employers out there, different kind of employers, different kind of industries, different kind of jobs. And I would love to help you to bridge the gap between having a list of employers and figuring out what jobs are available. So come and join us inside the club, and we can do our best to help you to navigate this program and come to Canada through the Atlantic Immigration Program. This is one of my favorite programs, and I will continue to endorse it until it goes away, which it doesn't seem like it's going away. And there are lots of resources that are available to you on my channel and on my website to explore this program even more. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around. If this video was helpful to you, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell. This is part of our A to Z series of every single Canadian immigration program from A to Z. And you're going to get a video just like this on a Monday or Tuesday to break down each of the immigration programs to help you understand it, see if it's applicable for you, and then take that leap. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe.